the media should do its job in achieving that, but also like we have to have boundaries and limits and reason at the same time.
How much she called him a pathetic, dirty loser.
So they'll just like drop the craziest like lore around me and think that I won't repeat it, which I often don't repeat it, but sometimes I do repeat it. So I don't know. If that starts to happen, then it might have a very counterproductive effect to draw more attention to him. Okay, hello everyone. We are here for episode 21 of Washed Up. I'm Colin, this is Abby in Washington, D.C. We're here to bring you the weekly news so that you don't have to listen to the legacy media that your grandparents do.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I guess we haven't done a true washed up episode in what, 2, 3 weeks? Because our last episode that we published was our interview of one another. So if you haven't watched that yet, that's a fun little episode to go watch that we will be pinning to the beginning of our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, and it wasn't for a lack of news stories happening that we haven't done a news related episode. It's more of like there's a lot going on that's kind of hard to parse out. And I think we both acknowledge like a couple of these stories might be above our pay grade at the moment. And so like we'll wait and see how they unfold and like if there's more conclusive stuff we can say about it later, we will. Like for example, the Epstein story is huge right now. It's all that anyone's really talking about, like the files and blah 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 blah. And it's very important. But we also kind of feel like what can we contribute to that that other commentators aren't saying? And at the moment, not too much. So
Yeah, I think that a while ago we had agreed to only really report on things we want to report on and things that we feel that we could put a unique spin on or a new perspective on. And speaking of, we may be a little bit late to this story, but I'm sure everyone ever has heard about what people are calling the Coldplay affair. When did you
yeah.
first see it? Probably on
Um,
social media, just
I
like through
think
Reels or something.
I think I heard it brought up on a podcast I was listening to, and I was like, that's kind of weird that they're going out of their way to talk about this. I thought it would kind of die the story. I didn't think it had legs, and it very much did. So again, it was one of those stories where I like questioned my own news judgment because I didn't think it would turn out being so big.
Yeah, so if you live under a rock, the story that we're referencing is this viral video that a girl posted at a Coldplay concert. And it was a part of the bit where Coldplay puts the camera on various people within the audience, and the one of the people or two of the people who were caught on camera was the CEO and head of HR of a company called Astronomer, and they were like hugging.
Is it like an AI company?
I see, even with all the coverage that's been happening, I like literally couldn't even tell you
Fair
about what
enough.
this company does. But basically, they were,
The word I kept hearing is canoodling. That word came up a lot. It's now in my lexicon.
yeah, they were seen, yeah, canoodling, I guess, and jumped away. I think, um, Andy, the CEO, he like had gone and went under, and then the woman like went to the side, and there was like somebody else who was allegedly in the company who was off to the side laughing at them, and then the band subsequently like made a joke being like, oh, they're either really embarrassed or they're having an affair. And yeah, this video was posted originally on TikTok, and it went extremely, extremely viral. Like I think 10.5 million views is what I last saw it at.
Yeah, I mean, completely, totally a national story for sure. And the fallout of it has been huge. I mean, I've seen it everywhere, like you said, from mainstream to podcast to social media. It's just kind of like the story has saturated the news cycle at a really strange time when there's a lot of other stuff also going on. So, what do you think about like kind of the cultural relevance of the story, why it became so big, and just like what have you seen out there said about it?
I've seen many jokes. I've seen a lot of parodies of it, like at sports games and stuff. I remember the Phillies game
That one was
actually.
funny.
Um, they had made a spiff on it, and people were like mimicking it and stuff like that. But when I think about why I think it became viral, I think people, especially in 2025, have to hold on to any way that they could have any sort of power or sway over accountability.
Hmm.
And I genuinely think that is what. one of the reasons why this particular moment went viral, that the audiences need to want to kind of publicly humiliate these people in the name of accountability, but also because their reaction and the coincidence of it being filmed and posted, their reaction was so overreactive. I think I've seen a
Right.
couple people say if they didn't react that way, there's no way it would have went viral like it did.
Yeah, like the
And
Streisand
yeah,
effect.
like I don't think that their partners would have found it. I don't think that girl would have posted it. Like if they had just acted like a normal couple, like there would be no, unless their partners were like analyzing or watching the Coldplay Jumbotrons, I doubt that they would have gotten caught for something like that. What about you?
Yeah,
What do you think about it?
no, I totally agree. I was seeing similar stuff, a lot of jokes, the sports games, but like what you were saying, I think people right now are kind of saturated in this story, but then also the Epstein stuff, and they're kind of trying to like calibrate or find like an equilibrium because it's just a lot of uncertainty and unknown with the Epstein stuff. So I think like this story caught so much traction because it's like, oh, they're caught like right up there on the screen. Everyone saw it, irrefutable. There it is. Powerful person taken down in a moment of shame. And like that's what people are trying to get at with the Epstein story, but kind of unable to find this resolution or like all of us are on very different pages when it comes to what was Epstein up to, what was actually going on. And so I think that's why those two stories happening at the same time make a bit of sense to me. And there's like a cultural tie, or like a reckoning that is, I think, manifesting through this story.
Totally. I think that people want to, like I said, and like what you just kind of said, like figure out the truth in that way. I think, honestly, I think that's why we even started this podcast is people were like us and people who we've interacted with really like now more than ever have this need to like find out the truth and to see something happen so publicly. People are really, really, really wanting to get at that and, spread that and no, there's nothing the internet loves more than a public shaming event. Like people love to gather in the circle and throw tomatoes at whoever is the spotlight of being canceled or of wrongdoing in people's eyes.
And I think like we were talking about this before, but I think this is really happening more and more with very powerful people. Like we were talking about one of the jokes going around was that every like season we need to like a new CEO gets selected for like that season sacrifice. Like I don't know, I've seen like the sacrifice of CEOs is coming up because first there was Brian Thompson who was literally murdered by Luigi Mangione back in December and everyone was kind of divided, in my view, like wrongly divided over that situation. And some people were saying like, oh, he deserved it because he was a person in power who caused potentially harm to other people. And then I think a lot of more sane, rational people were like, yeah, but violence is never the solution. We shouldn't be cutting people down. But this is sort of like the cutting down of a very powerful person. Again, and people are pointing out the parallels between those stories as well. And how do you think that speaks to the moment we're in right now?
I think I've also seen those jokes about the public sacrifice of a CEO or whatever, but I think it's hard to compare something like what happened with Mangione, who literally like murdered somebody, and then this public affair happening at Coldplay.
Or like they very much did this themselves. They
Yeah,
they put themselves in the situation to be
their own action.
right. Yeah.
And I guess there will be people who will argue that this CEO that Mangione killed is the consequences of like quote their actions, but I don't know, I have to disagree with that. Um, but I think that people again like on top of loving holding people quote holding people accountable because that's what they always say. People love the idea of bringing powerful people down, and I think that there is very much a level of needing to hold powerful people accountable and needing to be heard by the masses, but
I
I
see that ratcheting itself up more and more.
yeah.
Like as the months go by in the second Trump administration, and again, I hate to say it again, but like the Epstein stuff, I feel like the appetite is out there for the general public. Like they want to see more of stuff like this clearly, and I don't know, like it does concern me because I don't want it escalating to the point where like it's like French Revolution 2.0, like I think powerful people should be held to account and we should demand that and want that and the media should do its job in achieving that, but also like we have to have boundaries and limits and reason at the same time.
It's such an interesting conversation to talk about because I don't think there's anybody that I've talked to about this Coldplay situation that are like, but that poor CEO and that poor head of HR,
Right, right, right.
like they are very much have been made like public enemy number one of America. And people have loved to make fun of them. And you're thinking about like their families and like imagine finding out that your parents like cheated on one another or not parents on one another, but finding out that one of your parents cheated on the other one of your parents at a Coldplay concert through a viral video on TikTok. I've actually seen a trend of people actually pretending to be the child of either one of
I've
the
seen
two
that as
involved.
well.
And I'm like, who this man or woman has either had a million children or these people are just up for this power hungry like virality that will somehow get discovered anyway, which I think is just pathetic. I'll say that. Like
Yeah.
people love to grasp onto the virality of certain moments that is just it's just cringy to me.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. The people saying that they're like the child of one of the CEOs or the CEO or whatever, and it's pretty gross. They're like grasping for like 15 minutes of fame. But in the age of internet, like again, everything like telling those kind of obvious lies, like it's very easy to expose. So it's not gonna really get them anything. But I saw, oh, so another thing I saw was the statement released by the wife of the CEO who was caught, the man, so his wife released a statement that I thought was really good. People were remarking that like quickly after he was caught and this video was posted and exposed him, his wife like changed her last name on Facebook or something, or like on social media to drop his name
I did see that.
and people were saying like that's kind of a boss move that she wasn't gonna like sit there and kind of think about giving him a second chance, but she immediately was like, this was humiliating. I'm not like it's clearly over between them, so it seems. And then her statement indicated the same, where she was like, you know, talking in basic terms of like they were headed for divorce because of his actions and that she was humiliated, but she wasn't going to let it kind of get her down and that she was planning to like come out of this with a new sense of life, I think.
Yeah, I think I would say I would like to say that I would do something similar if I were her. Like I think people are applauding her a lot right now in terms of like imagine finding it out that way and holding her head up high in that way of making a public statement when they're not even expected really to make a public statement. Like I don't think that was something that is or was required of her or of anyone involved on the outskirts of the situation by no means of their own fault. Um, I've seen the way that Astronomer has handled it as well. Like recently they released a sort of press video with Gwyneth Paltrow. What do you think about that PR strategy?
Um,
Wondering
it
how
makes
much they
sense, but
they spent on
the
her.
weird thing is like me as a Gen Z person, I don't really know much about Gwyneth Paltrow other than she was in a lawsuit over a ski accident and she apparently like only drinks bone broth and that's it. Those are the only things I know about her. So I couldn't tell you a single thing that she's been in or like accomplished in her career. I'm sure she has, but I don't know what those things are. So like seeing them hire Gwyneth Paltrow to be their spokesperson, like yeah, they'll get some traction off of it. Like their company might rebound after the effects of their old CEO being humiliated, but like culturally, I think it'll just be a blip. I think it's not going to really change much.
I know Gwyneth Paltrow in Iron Man, but otherwise, people were saying that it was because she's Chris Martin of Coldplay's ex-wife.
Oh, I didn't
And
even know that. Okay,
yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and that he like had allegedly cheated on her during that time. So that's like the
Oh.
little like PR you can
Okay,
go. I've
that's
also
that's
just
pretty
discovered
that's
this
pretty
yesterday.
clever actually.
Yeah.
I have to
So
give it
that's
to them.
why they hired Gwyneth Paltrow is what people are conspirizing.
Interesting. So, yeah, is there anything else about I guess like going back a little bit, people who get cheated on in a very public way and then kind of take this bold approach of like it's over, cutting it off, we're done, versus like people who get cheated on in a very public way who kind of stay with their partner. How do you feel about that? Because like I'm thinking of now like Bill and Hillary Clinton. Obviously, Bill cheated on her with Monica, possibly other people throughout their marriage, and yet when it all came to light and they were very publicly humiliated. Hillary stayed with Bill. And then also now I'm thinking of like Beyonce with Jay-Z and like she wrote the whole Lemonade album about being cheated on. And like, what do you think about, especially like power couples or people where both are in a position of power and yet it comes to light that like there's been an affair?
Or I'm also thinking about Ned Fulmer and
Yeah.
his wife, who she chose to stay with him as well. Which we was another huge cheating scandal that everyone knew about from the Try Guys. And I think
We were
that
in the newsroom in at USD when
yeah,
that broke, and we were like all kind of reacting. We were like reacting in real time to the headline about Ned Fulmer cheating allegedly on his wife with this executive producer on the show.
yeah,
Yeah, someone he wor who's his assistant essentially or worked for him. So do you think there's any contrast or like overlap between that incident a couple years back and now this one?
definitely. I think that there's some overlap in that. I mean, I don't know too much about the relationship between the CEO and his wife or anything like that. And I'm not saying that like knowing their relationship would make the cheating okay, but they're definitely Ned definitely marketed himself as this really family oriented, perfect husband, loves his wife sort of guy. And none of the Try Guys seemingly knew about this cheating because they had released a video following it and was also engaging in the act of holding Ned accountable versus it seems like the astronomer people seem to have known allegedly if that was one of their coworkers who was at the concert with them and it could have even been like a work event concert or whatever happened there. So there's some differences there. But the whole public shame aspect is still there that Ned Fulmer was and still to this day is very publicly shamed, which goes back to your original question about the people who have been cheated on staying with their partners, especially if they have the power to leave. I think that there is a contrast between the people who do leave and the people who don't, especially in the public eye, because people have a lot more respect for the people who do leave. And I think this doesn't have to do with these relationships that I'm naming because like people like Beyonce and Jay-Z and like Ned and his wife, I don't even know her name, Ariel, I think,
Ariel,
yeah.
yeah.
And Hillary and Bill, like they're very powerful couples and people who I assume have the resources and money to be able to like make it on their own. So that also might be an extra layer as to like why are you staying with this person if they did this to you? Because there are some scenarios where couples, maybe that happens, but for example, if partner A has all the resources and income and money and partner B like is very codependent or reliant on this person and needs to stay with them, I think that's a whole different scenario. And I think it's easy for people to see it black and white like that of being like, oh, you're staying with them. Why? Like, what is the reason? If you have the resources and the means to be able to leave, why would you put yourself through that? Why would you embarrass yourself like that? Like, I see it as not I, but I think that the rest of the world sees it as embarrassing and a little bit cringeworthy.
Yeah, and like definitely you kind of have to look at each couple on a case by case basis. I've definitely heard like no one knows a relationship except for the two people in it. And I think that's fair. And we should probably like preface it with that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think it does matter like whether or not a couple or even an individual like survives an affair situation kind of depends a lot. Like with Bill and Hillary, the public kind of assumed like Bill was a ladies' man. Like that was the expectation. He was just known for being like very smooth talking, charismatic, like this and that. And so I think when like the Monica stuff broke, it was surprising, but he was really like it wasn't like shocking. And for Hillary to stay with him, people, chalk it up to like it was politically convenient, so they stayed together. Is that the nice interpretation? Possibly not, but like they as a couple were able to survive that situation, and she went on to have like more of a political career because I think the expectation was that it was already seen as a political alliance to begin with, versus like Ned
Mhm.
and Ariel. Like you said, Ned like branded himself as a family guy, and that was his brand. So when he deviated from that in a way that like blindsided people, including his like friends and audience, he hasn't really managed to like come back into the public light in a new, like kind of reformed way where people can still accept and, look up to him. And again, with Beyonce and Jay-Z, it's sort of like, I don't know.
I almost
That
think
one's tougher. That one's
it's
a little
tough
tougher.
because I feel like they have made a comeback from that. Like
Oh yeah, I
people
agree.
look at Beyonce and think, "Oh, that's so embarrassing that she stayed with him," or like, "Oh, that's so like I pity her or whatever," because she's such a powerhouse. Like Jay-Z, I don't even really like when I think about Beyonce, I think of her own her own accomplishments first, how successful she is, her music, and the way that she has managed to build up her own career. And I think of Jay-Z and I don't even really think about his cheating anymore. Like, and did I ever? Like, I don't even, it happened when we were
Yeah.
so young
So
too.
it's
So maybe
like
that's a part of it.
for sure, like strange how some couples kind of move past it and it kind of fades into the background. And then others, like it does become a defining tenet of that relationship in the public eye, but people are willing to overlook it. And then others, people get like caught in these affairs and it ends their career, it ends their public credibility altogether. So it's just so weird how situationally people will treat cheating very differently.
What do you think about the public shame aspect?
Um, I think it's good to highlight that cheating has far-reaching consequences. So, like, it's not just the marriage that's being broken up, in this case, two marriages that might get broken up, but it's also like we were talking about how cheating kind of puts this undue burden on the community to, like, again, like overlook or hold the weight of that lie for someone else. And I think that that's very destructive and damaging. So anytime people are engaging in cheating, I totally think it's a bad course of action that should be called out. But again, like I hate like pile-ons. Like I hate when it feels like cancel culture, like the public has chosen someone that they dislike for whatever reason. They're gonna find a reason to end them, and whether that be cheating or something else, they're gonna like take them down. I'm not a fan of that mentality or like yeah, like the pile-on effect where people get a sense of moral superiority by shaming another person, saying like, I would never do that. When in reality, like everyone is human, everyone is fallible and like capable of making those kinds of mistakes.
I agree with you. I think does that make me exempt from laughing at certain things or from maybe doing a repost or two of some funny jokes that I've seen? No. Like I definitely think that
I
I
think humor is a healthy way of dealing, but like the shaming pile on is less
people
so.
threatening to like kill other people
Yeah.
or anything like that. When it comes to cancel culture, I think cancel culture is so different from accountability. Like, it is crazy the way that people pile on to certain public figures or certain people who are caught doing things like cheating or whatever. But like, I'm like, where's the same energy for when our government is going to shit? Like, where's the same energy for when we're gonna pile on like you know what I'm saying? I feel like it's so much easier to get people to pile on holding people accountable for cheating. not even saying that they're doing it right. I put air quotes for people who don't see the video version. Um, and holding people accountable for the actual decisions that impact masses.
Right. Like, I think there is probably a sense of control that people get out of the pylon that they're participating in, because it's like, oh, like I'm bringing about some change in the world, even though it might be something really insignificant or like kind of mundane, as opposed to like actually like changing the political landscape and making like a positive impact or substantive change in the culture. So I don't know. I think it's like, yeah, people who engage in cancel culture for cancel culture's sake, I don't really understand what they're seeking from it. And
Mhm.
I tend to disagree with it when I see it happening.
Me too.
Is there anything, could we maybe open it up a little bit to like the topic of cheating in general and like how we've kind of been talking about, but we were looking up stats before we started recording this about like the percentage of people that cheat. So there was like a report in 2020 saying that 20% of men have admitted to cheating and only 10% of women reported having an affair. So part of the difficulty here in discussing this is when you look up the stats of like percentages of people that cheat, it's very, you'll get like a bunch of conflicting results. Because it's hard, I think, to define what is cheating. I think people have a hard time with that in and of itself. But then also, well, it's like you're using like self-report versus like some other objective metric. It's just like to find the statistics of the actual percentages of people that cheat on their partner is very hard. But it seems like men do it more often than women do. Um, but a high percentage of people, possibly even a majority, have experienced cheating in a relationship, either as the cheater or the cheated on.
There's a lot of different versions of cheating too, especially with social media and the technology age that we're in. I have heard different takes on like what people think cheating is. Like some people will say that like liking someone's bikini picture, for example, on Instagram is a form of cheating, or that like watching porn is a form of cheating, or that any sort of like talking to another person in any romantic way is cheating. And I mean that's all up in air. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say like no, that's not cheating because like who am I to say anything like that? It's really just like I think the boundaries that you set in your own relationships, I guess, and like what you're okay with. And I think that should be talked about in almost every relationship that you have, that's romantic and monogamous. And I think it's important to be with people, I guess, who understand those boundaries. But that's really interesting that you bring up those statistics because when you had first said those statistics to me or something of this sort before we started recording, I was really shocked to hear how high the percentage was. Um, but I also think it's surprising to hear how high like divorce rates are. Um, that has gone down, is what I hear, but it's also because people aren't getting married. Because our generation is getting older and older and like realizing, I guess, like the mistakes of maybe past generations and like not getting married like immediately when they graduate college or like when they graduate high school or in their early 20s. Like, I hardly know anybody who's close to me who's even thinking of marriage yet, and I'm 23, so.
So we're going to talk a little bit more about like emotional cheating versus physical cheating and the boundaries and how people establish that. Yeah, I think it's interesting because everyone's going to define it slightly different, which again is shown in the statistics where people have a hard time actually identifying the rate at which people cheat. But I do think like the solution possibly is just communicating, like you said, a lot when you're in a relationship about where is your boundary, what will you and what you tolerate. And like no one like wants to have those conversations because it can be kind of like I think we all like want to assume that our partner will implicitly like know where our boundaries are and they would just like never cross them because like we care about each other.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, like when you live in the real world, people can't read minds and so you have to sometimes spell it out like very clearly. And I think that actually prevents accidentally hurting people. But as far as like the shaky boundary between where to draw the line of what qualifies as cheating or not. Like it is going to depend a lot on different people. And some people will say, I think I've heard like women in particular feel that emotional cheating could even be worse than physical cheating. Whereas like at least from my perspective, I'm like, I think physical cheating is worse. I think so at least. And I think like emotional cheating is not ideal, but like, you can kind of understand why you can't expect that like one person is going to meet all of your emotional needs for the rest of your life and it's always going to be that way and never change. So like if people have to sort of like have in-depth conversations with people of the opposite sex that's not their spouse, I'm like, okay, like that's not the end of the world. But there are some people who would look at that and be like, that is the worst form of cheating. That's even worse than physical cheating. How could you even say that? So again, it's very subjective and everyone's going to have a little bit of different opinion about it. You happen to have an opinion on like which is worse, physical or emotional cheating?
This is so funny because all of my guy friends I've talked to always says that physical cheating is worse, and all my girls say emotional cheating is worse. I think that I don't know which side I'm on because definitely I think that like what even is emotional cheating? Like is it talking about things that you wouldn't talk about with like me, or is it like is it like completely falling in love with somebody else and falling out of love with somebody in a, do you know what I'm saying? Like I don't
Yeah.
even know what the clear definition of emotional cheating is. For sure, physical cheating would freaking suck. Like that would not be ideal at all and like really suck. But I guess is it easier to come back to somebody if it was like say like a drunken mistake or something like that? Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like not that being drunk like I don't know why I even threw that in there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that has nothing to do with anything, and I might even cut that out. Like, but I don't know which one would be more painful, and I hope not to know ever.
Right. Well, I mean, I think partners should definitely not keep secrets from each other. I just think that that's a recipe for disaster. So, like, I would have a problem if I was in a relationship with like the emotional cheating, quote unquote, if like if they went to someone else to tell them something that they wouldn't tell me because they don't want to tell me. Like that would kind of bother me a little bit. I would find that a little bit like suspicious, but it wouldn't like immediately be grounds for like an arg maybe it would be grounds for a discussion, but it wouldn't be like a complete violation, I guess. I think like everyone has to have a sense of having their own like personal autonomy and agency and like if having other relationships outside of your primary relationship in an emotional way where you're like vulnerable with people, possibly even like sharing intimate details, but stuff that your partner is also aware about, like I don't see an issue necessarily with that. It's more of like if it's being done to keep a secret from the partner or the emotional connection is happening with someone else at the expense of your primary partner, then yeah, that's a little bit
Yeah, that would
messier.
definitely be a little knife to the heart.
And with the physical cheating stuff, I think the reason that I think that's so just blatantly disrespectful is like I don't know, like you think about like STDs and stuff and how you're introducing that threat to the person who you're professing to care about the most and just other like things like that where you don't know what you're opening yourself up to by physically being intimate with someone who's not your partner and so then you're just potentially opening up like a Pandora's box and it's just extremely disrespectful on its face to me. But to each their own. Everyone again has different opinions
Interpretation of
about
I
all
think
this.
cheating. Let us
Yeah.
know in the comments what your opinion on cheating
Yeah,
is.
serious.
Um, yeah,
So we could probably transition to the other topic we wanted to discuss, which was the sentencing for Brian Kohberger. Um,
definitely a lot tougher of a topic to talk about, and apologies if it's like a really hard tonal shift right now. But yes, that did just happen, and it was definitely expected for um a while. Like I feel like this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, we talked in our last episode, episode 20, about the plea deal that he got, where essentially the prosecution like arranged for him to plead guilty to the four murders and theft, and he was going to evade the death penalty that way, but probably get life in prison. And then they held the sentencing just this past week. So, did you watch any of that, the testimony and the trial and whatnot?
Yeah, I watched all of the victim statements for the Idaho 4, and that was really, really hard to watch. Um, yeah, I mean, for Colin and I too, like we've been keeping, I'm sure the rest of the world too, but I will never forget when the news dropped initially of what had happened and the way that the world in the beginning was attacking um, Dylan and Bethany, the two roommates who survived, and how everyone was theorizing like all these things that was happening. Like it was, were we sophomores or juniors? We were
Mhm.
juniors because that happened when I was news editor. Yeah, I remember really keeping up with it and like knowing that there was something really off about the case or all this stuff. Like everyone was talking about it, and to see it come to a close with these really, really heartfelt, hard to listen to because of the lack of humanity of Kohberger and stuff like that, like in the victim statements, like it was just a really hard listen and watch.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to watch the full like live stream of his sentencing, but I kind of couldn't bring myself to initially. Like the day that it happened, I listened to a commentary here and there about it, but I couldn't like actually watch the live stream. So just before we started recording this, yeah, I was kind of like worked up the nerve to actually like listen to it, and it was exactly as devastating as I was expecting, as you would expect. Especially Dylan Mortensen's testimony, who's a surviving roommate. She talked, a lot about how this has affected her life in all the ways you would expect, but just it became like sort of a complete change in her life, complete paradigm shift where from here on out, like she'll always be kind of hyper vigilant and looking over her shoulder and anxious. And that she talked a little bit or alluded to at least survivor's guilt, like why does she survive and they didn't? She talked about what was taken from losing her roommates and the lives that they wouldn't be able to live. She talks about seeing them in a dream and being able to say goodbye to them, and that brought some sense of resolution, but obviously is not the same as actually having said goodbye. So it was very touching, really hard to listen to, but I think her testimony was definitely stood out as very powerful.
Definitely. I think I also wanted to talk about a little bit about Kaylee's family's testimonies. Did you get the chance to listen to
I
theirs?
don't think I would. I want to listen to after this, but I didn't listen to that one.
Kaylee's family's testimonies were like they were very powerful in that they were very much hitting him where where the narcissistic, sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies are. Like Kaylee's sister, her testimony was I thought was so powerful in that she had done her research on the research project that Kohberger was doing right before everything blew up, and like talked about how smart he thought he was and how much she called him a pathetic, dirty loser, which I thought was great. She opened it up being like, I will not cry for you because that's what you want. I'm not going to show any tears. Um, and she instead, alluding to his research project, asked all the questions that he had asked in the research project, but switched it on to him being ordinary, average. Like it was like a knife, every single word she did, because like she really did her research on it. I saw like a bunch of psychologists and therapists like analyzing it, being like, this is exactly what to do to hurt this man.
So as you're saying this, I think I did hear one thing she said, which was like if Kaylee had been awake when you attacked her, she would have kicked your ass or something like that. And
Yeah.
again, like hitting at his wound of being an insecure, possibly incel guy who's just kind of like doesn't really have a life, doesn't really have a meaning in his life. And she was really coming for that and bringing that up. And I think, yeah, that probably you like to think that he would emotionally like respond to that, but it's kind of questionable with how far gone he clearly is.
Yeah,
But
people were like trying to analyze his like micro facial expressions to see like which parts affected him the most because Kaylee's mom and dad both did something very similar. Like they were very much insulting him, being like you're dirty, you're average, you're normal. You may have I think his her Kaylee's mom said something like you may have gotten all A's in college, but you're about to get all D's in prison or something like that. Like an insane roast. Like they were like
shoot.
going at him being Kaylee's sister also said something like, "Don't think you're special just because somebody finally said your name out loud."
Oh.
Like you're like just very much him being like you are just the most ordinary average person. Like you can't even do well at getting away with this if you're so smart. Like how did you do all this? The exact quote I think she said was like if you hadn't snuck into their room like an effing pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your ass.
Well, I'm glad that like they were able to publicly say these things. I think it's important and having like an sort of airing out like yeah, I do think that's something that the families probably needed and the fact that America kind of got to watch it, I don't know.
Yeah, how do you feel about like the publicity of everything?
I think it's generally a positive thing. If nothing else, like maybe the people out there who are similarly kind of like warped or twisted in their thinking, they might, on the off chance that they do see this happening, they might realize like following in Kohberger's footsteps is not going to lead them anywhere they want to go. So like I think that at its best, the criminal justice system can do that, like deter future crime. And for that reason, like having this very public well, first of all, the victims should be heard and they should be able to tell their story and
Hmm.
express it. So I'm fully
Definitely.
like in support of
Fully in support of
that.
that as well.
But then on the off chance that like it does have this deterring effect, that seems good. But unfortunately, I do think it's probably going to draw more attention to Kohberger. And although I would like for Kaylee's family to be correct that he will just kind of rot away and no one will ever think about him again, unfortunately, this is already such a big case that they probably are going to start like researching Kohberger as a person, and apparently his old professor is interested in possibly doing that and like
Um,
analyzing him from like a criminology standpoint. I don't know. Like if that starts to happen, then it might have a very counterproductive effect to draw more attention to him.
I agree with you. I think that yes, there I 100% in support of the victims and their families like being able to have that moment. There are some people online being like, I hate that they didn't make him get up there and like say why he did it. What do you think about that? Like, do you think that there would have been a benefit in making Koberger get on the stand and be like,
Well,
why did you do what you did?
I mean, they can't exactly like make him say anything, unfortunately. Like we would all like to know sort of more about what drove him to do it, because I think that puts people's minds at ease a little bit, or like makes them feel like they can at least put this story to rest. But you can't like make someone explain their thinking. And even if you could, he seems like a very kind of like I don't think he would be able to articulate what drove him to do it in the first place. So unfortunately, like I think they did ask him if he wanted to make a statement at some point in this whole process, and he kind of a little bit snidely was like, I refuse to clarify or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking to myself like, oh, even if they did make him say something, not that I don't even think they can make him like what you're saying, is you don't even like who in this who is trusting this man anyway? Like he could say can make a complete foolery of it. Like it doesn't matter. He's already sentenced to everything. Like no one really like would that do good to be able to give him a space to talk? Probably not.
Yeah, no, I don't personally think so. I'm glad he'll be in jail forever. Unfortunately, like the taxpayers are gonna have to support that, but as a principle, neither of us really supporting the death penalty. Like as a final punishment, I think it at least is kind of fitting.
I agree with that. And I hope that the victims can rest easy as well as their families in whatever way that they could find to live and heal from the trauma of the past. Like what, this happened in 2022?
Yeah.
3 years. Wow.
And the last thing that I have to say is like I think the families are okay with this result because they didn't really want to have a prolonged, drawn out trial. And we had talked in the last episode about like would we rather have a whole trial where they can kind of like present the evidence and lay out a very clear case and then have a jury convict him and decide. But I think in the end, like if the families think that this is the right punishment for him, then like the rest of us should probably agree. Or
Yeah, anything that they deem is correct, certainly yes.
okay. So I was gonna talk about this story was I had this idea before this Washington Post editorial came out, but the Washington Post was talking about how CVS is kind of undermining itself by putting all of its products, especially hygiene products, behind like glass. Or you go in there and you have to like have someone unlock it for you, and it's just kind of a pain in the butt. So I wanted to speak on that too because I was in CVS and I was literally just buying like deodorant, but the deodorant is behind the glass, as is, like I said, almost every hygiene product now. So really, it kind of like raises the question, what are you even going to CVS for if literally all of the basics, the toiletries and whatnot, are not readily available? Like they have I go there for like energy drinks occasionally, or like I guess they have snacks and stuff. But again, I feel like the hallmark of CVS is that you go there for like pharmacy, hygiene, etc. So I don't know. I just don't understand. I think obviously they're putting it behind glass because there's sort of this increase in homelessness, and they think that people are going to come in the store and steal stuff. And so, grocery stores, pharmacies, whatever, might have like a very thin profit margin. So they think that this is going to protect their business. And as a business, I'm sure that they have the right to do that, and clearly they're exercising that. But I just fundamentally kind of disagree with assuming that your customers are going to steal from you kind of sets up this weirdly like adversarial tone. Like whenever I walk into a CVS now, which is quite often, I go there every couple of days just for various different stuff. It just sets up like this like adversarial feel where like you have to literally call someone over. They're often busy. They're also supposed to be watching the register. So if you really want to be avoiding theft, this probably is not the way to go because you're calling an employee away from watching the register to a back section of the store to ask them to unlock the thing for you. And they act kind of put out about it, and you are kind of annoyed about it too. And it's just like this horrible dynamic. And I'm like, CVS, what are you doing? Like, is there no other way that we've thought to prevent theft? I know California was having a lot of problems with this, but it's all over DC as well. No one has really come up with a solution, and I would say they should think of something different because it's not working.
I have so many follow-up questions for you after my Bury the Lead. But anyways, my Bury the Lead is going to be about the NDAs in DC or the lack of. I cannot tell you since moving to this city how much of a joke an NDA is here. I think that like especially when I'm on walks or in the metro or around or near the hill, I swear people talk about things that are supposed to be confidential with their coworkers on the metro or like whatever in the most like nonchalant, like casual way. Like sometimes I have AirPods in, but I'm not playing any music and I'm like overhearing some conversations, which I'm not gonna like talk about or anything like that. But it is so it's so like oh my gosh, if your client knew you were saying this, like, and I'll be like researching it on my phone, being like looking up these names that people are dropping, and I'm like, if your client knew you're saying this so publicly, like, wouldn't you get in trouble? And like, granted, like, I don't know these people. I don't know if they're playing a prank on me or the general public. Like, it could totally be like a social experiment. But I think that people are so willing to break these NDAs and like back channel and stuff like that. And I'm sure that this isn't new information because people always talk about how there's like an inner circle within DC and with like within like politics and whatnot like of like the blue and the red being on such opposite sides in the media, but they're getting dinner together like after work or something like that, which I do believe is
Can
true.
confirm.
Yeah, can confirm, can like see it. I see them acting all civil, like it's all for show, for the media, for the rest of the country to be ideologically against each other and at each other's throats. But when it comes to an NDA, like, and I don't even know if it's like, it's just like very interesting. Like, this isn't even a rant, more so as something that I've noticed the longer that I've lived here. And I think I lived here for like 3 months now. And it is very interesting what information people are willing to, um, like let loose. And even like younger workforce people, I think are even more willing to let things loose because it might even come from like a form of ego or a form of like, oh my gosh, like guess what I'm involved in? Like you'll never believe what I'm involved in. And I just think it's crazy. And the rest of the world should too. We'll talk
Uh,
about yours first
okay, okay,
because we did yours first.
sure.
Um, I think I 100% agree with you. I remember the first time I saw like hygiene products or whatever locked up was actually in Vegas, my hometown, and it was at my local Target. And I was like, what the heck? Like, why is it all like I can't just go and like I have to wait for someone and it's just an inconvenience. And at the end of the day, if you get something out of that, like you can just still steal it anyway. Like you're still in the store. Like I've never done that, but like from that point of view, like once it's out of there, like, what's the difference of taking it off the shelf and stealing it, or of waiting and inconveniencing somebody working to come get it, unlock it, wait for them to walk away, and then putting it in your bag anyways? But I did want to ask you, there's an argument against it being like, oh, well, people see it locked up, they see a higher amount of security, and psychologically they think to themselves, well, this place must be more serious about like theft or something like that. So like just the idea of seeing things locked up or the idea of seeing like, for example, like more security guards prevents people from stealing. Like, what do you think about that argument?
I'm sure that it probably does actually drive down theft because it is a complete pain in the ass. So like I'd imagine these glass cases do drive theft down. So from that standpoint, like yeah, it makes sense why they're using them. And also, like you said, like having beefed up security can create this atmosphere that makes the theft less likely. However, for me, it's more of like I also think treating people as if they're going to behave criminally can also evoke criminal-like behavior. So, like, there's similar arguments about, like, in schools, should we have kids walk through metal detectors when they come into schools to make sure that they're not bringing in, like, weapons? I have gone back and forth about it, but I tend to think no, because if you're going to pre-assume something that someone might do, then it's impossible to kind of prevent them from internalizing that. And then are you going to now evoke that behavior from them because you're, putting it in their mind? I don't know. I think everyone can think for themselves, so the psychological impacts of these kinds of things are really wishy-washy. But it is like a thought that comes to mind. I think treating people as if they're criminal before they have the chance to prove themselves trustworthy is just a bad business model for sure, but bad policy in general.
It kind of reminds me of the self-fulfilling prophecy,
Yeah.
being like if you put people in this box or if you view people in this way and push that narrative onto them, they're only going to fulfill it. What do you think about my little Bury the Lead?
Oh God. I
Do you
so
relate?
oh yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that, don't you think that people like don't care about secrets in this town?
So to your last point about the people who are kind of younger who like to like
It's like a
slip.
offhand brag
Yeah,
almost.
no, I
But in
totally
like
think
your
it
freaking
is.
contract.
I totally think it's like people like to seem like they're very in the know, so they will like casually drop something thinking it's very casual, but not understanding like how it sounds or comes off. So I've definitely seen that. Definitely have like seen instances where people who claim to hate one another are in close proximity slash actually in agreement or working together. That's very interesting. Like, yeah, people in DC can be very fake when it comes to their beliefs. Their beliefs can be more of like performance at times. And yes, the people, see, I'm very like quiet and introverted in my personal life. So people assume that like because I'm quiet, I'm also unable to hear things. So they'll just like drop the craziest like lore around me and think that I won't repeat it, which I often don't repeat it, but sometimes I do repeat it. So I don't know, like,
Or to go off of that, I'm currently in my job right now. I'm not involved in any way in politics or in anything on the Hill. I'm not involved in.
right.
Not saying that I never want to be involved, not involved in it, but I think because people see what I do for work and maybe deem it as not as important or as something that like people don't think that I understand what's going on in the world or keep up with things that maybe is their entire life within their work, but little do they know I have a podcast analyzing the news. And I
Yeah,
think they sometimes people will tell me things and I'm like, do you think that I don't understand this? Or do you think that I like I guess because I have nothing to do with it, but like also I'm like, this is kind of sus. Like, why are you telling me this?
I feel like a good journalist has to be a good eavesdropper.
Yeah, I agree with
And
that.
I'm
Definitely
not
agree with that.
I'm not saying I'm like the best at journalism, but I'm really good at eavesdropping, I have to say. Like I feel like some of our better content has come from like comments that I'll overhear and then right into a story. Like even like some we had a really funny title one time that was completely something I had overheard someone else casually mentioning to their friend on campus, and I was like, that's actually really funny. Let's like write that into the story. And a lot of the stories when we went to the army parade, like a lot of what we observed hinged on like the people that we were overhearing and listening to and just kind of like sussing out like why are they showing up at this event, and we were able to gather a lot of information that way, I think.
Hmm.
So you got to be a good eavesdropper. I was gonna ask you, what's your favorite Capitol Hill rumor? I have one, but I don't know if I'm.
I don't even know, like,
See, the fact that we don't work on Capitol Hill right now makes us kind of the best people to deliver the news.
no, right? That's why you should follow us because we don't have any stake in this. And yeah, we don't, I guess. Like, we can't be punished for things that we say, allegedly. Um, I can't even think of one right now. I did, I don't want to say that. I have something to tell you off camera, which is where I'm gonna get cut off. Do you
Yeah,
have a favorite?
I was just about to say it, but then I was like, oh, but that could be a lawsuit, and I don't want to end up like Candace Owens with her Brigitte lawsuit. But I do have a really good one that I'll have to share with you after. And maybe once we can get some more sources on it, we'll bring it to the rest of our
Yeah.
audience as well.
Okay. You have anything else to get off your chest before we end this episode?
Nope.
This was a fun ending. I love that Colin and I are both in the same location and that it happens to be DC because I feel like we get a lot of one first-hand experience and two just like stupid stuff that we overhear or things I would have never had that Bury the Lead if I didn't live here. Like I would have never known how much people do not care about loose lips in this town.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a good podcast title, Loose Lips, about like things you overhear in DC.
Maybe we'll do an episode on that. That would be so crazy. Anyways, I'm all good too.
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Washed
Washed up
up out.
out.